This is Tristan Schoen from Author and Punisher. You are listening to The New Scene.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to The New Scene. I am your host, Keith, and we're back with another brand new episode, and we've got a great one for you this week. We have King Yosef, and I hope you know King Yosef by now. He makes excellent industrial-infused hardcore metal music. He just put out two great singles called Mist of Pain and Dredge, and he put out a great LP in 2023 called An Underlying Hum. He's been at it for a bit now. He started out producing beats for some well-known rappers and has segued into making the music that you hear now from King Yosef. But he's done it all. He's toured with Converge. He just played Roadburn Festival. He just finished a big tour with Health earlier this year. And he's got an interesting life. He has come from hard times, and he has overcome a lot of things to get to where he's at now. And he tells us all about it. And in addition to the conversation with King Yosef, we have our artist spotlight interview for the month with RJ Rabe from Drought. Drought recently signed to Iodine Recordings and just put out their 3-song self-titled EP. So we hear about the EP from RJ. It's a jam-packed episode, and we will be getting to all of that shortly. But first, here's how you can support The New Scene. And here's what I'm going to ask for. I want Apple Podcast and Spotify reviews. We've got like 220 Apple Podcast reviews and 270 Spotify reviews. Open up your app in Spotify and Apple Podcasts and hit that 5-star button. We've got to get to 300. We have to. We have to do it, and I need your help to get there. If you've rated on one platform, rate on the other. If you haven't rated at all, now is the time. Also, don't forget to support Iodine Recordings. You can pre-order the complete discography from Boston's Hassan I Saba. Hassan I Saba was a short-lived but legendary emo violence band that originated in 1999 in Boston, Massachusetts. They existed for less than a year, but their legacy lives on. Untitled is the discography, and it serves as the defining document of Hassan I Saba, archiving all of the known recordings, photographs, and show posters, which took years to find and collect. Pre-order it right now. The street date on that record is Friday, September 13th. The Drought self-titled EP is out right now. You can order that. The debut LP from Love Letter is coming up soon. The record is called Everyone Wants Something Beautiful. Make sure you order that. We've also got the new LP from Her Head's on Fire coming. That's called Strange Desires, and it's out July 19th. Follow Iodine on Instagram at Iodine Recordings. And don't forget to support our sponsor for the month of June, Persistent Vision Records. Persistent Vision is an independent record label based in Richmond, Virginia, and they're home to a ton of bands that we know and love. Here's some new releases out in June from Persistent Vision. Abak, the Insania LP. Respire, they just re-released Denouement, and the accompanying LP Memorial. And Farn, the Departure of Consciousness LP, is available now to order. That's the 10-year anniversary reissue. There's a couple pre-orders that just launched. Pre-orders are up for 2 vinyl LP releases from Italian screamo legends Rain, the 20th anniversary reissue of Ironai et Pas de Orchestre, and a new collection LP of non-album material spanning 2004 to 2015, including their splits and an EP. The new LP from Blind Girls, An Exit Exists. It's up now for pre-order. That's 12 new songs of chaotic, mathy, screamo-inspired hardcore. Blind Girls have a US tour in July, including East Coast dates with Heavenly Blue, and an appearance at New Friends Fest. And don't forget to check out Dark Days, Bright Nights. This is a fest curated by Persistent Vision and Mike Taylor of Page 99. 3 days of DIY music, September 13th through 15th. in Richmond, Virginia. A lot of great bands on this. Page 99, Soul Glow, Thou, Portrayal of Guilt, Young Widows, Pygmy Lush, No Man, Abak, and The Red Scare. You can order all these records online at persistentvisionrecords.com and deathwishinc.com. And don't forget to follow Persistent Vision on Instagram at Persistent Vision Records. Okay, so check back in with me in segment 3. We'll do a brief wrap-up of King Yosef. I'll talk a little bit about what's going on. We'll do the artist spotlight interview with Drought. But right now, we are going to speak to King Yosef. Enjoy. All right. We are here now with Tevez Yosef Pelletier, otherwise known as King Yosef. Yosef, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, Yosef, it's great to have you here. There's a lot of exciting things going on with you. You just put out 2 new singles, which I think are my favorite that I've heard from you so far.
Thank you.
You just got off a massive tour with Health. You're playing Roadburn Fest this year. There's a lot to cover. There's a lot happening. But first, I want to ask you, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm tired, but there's a lot of work to be done. So, I'm in a good spot though.
Didn't you just get back from the tour like within the past couple of days?
Yeah, I believe I got home 6 days ago now, and I took about 6 hours of rest, and then I've been perpetually just working since I've been home.
So you took only 6 hours of rest,
yeah,
and then got back to work.
Yep.
Wow. You are driven. Wait, how old are you?
I'm 26. I turned 27 in 2 weeks.
Okay, so you still have a lot of energy. It's fine. I understand. So what does rest constitute for you? Like you get home from the tour, you finally get home. What do? Do you just lay there? Do you watch stuff? What do you do?
Full vegetable. Like I just lay in bed and, you know what I mean? I'll turn something on, but I don't watch it. I just lay there. So I did.
That's what I do too. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I did when I got home the night of tour being over. And then I immediately woke up the next morning, like had a lazy morning, but then instantly got up and got on emails and working on the new set and etc.
Is there always work to do? I mean, are you constantly working on music or talking to publicists or getting emails about collaborations? What's a daily day look like for you?
Yeah, there's like constantly something to do. I think also the other thing is too, is that I'm like, that's kind of my double-edged sword of my life is that even if there's nothing to do, I will find something because I'm constantly thinking about like, if I'm not doing something that feels proactive towards my goal, then I feel like I'm doing nothing. So rest is a very hard thing for me, but yeah, a lot of emailing. I also run like a little DIY collective label sort of thing called BLEAKHOUSE. So I'm always working with my friends to help them with stuff as well. And then like I do a lot of the graphic design backend stuff for King Yosef. And then as well, I do graphic design for BLEAKHOUSE. And then I don't have I don't have a team other than a lawyer and a publicist. So anything else that happens in the King Yosef world is something that I have to execute and email and chat with people about and, tighten all the screws on.
Yeah. I like that you're this driven at 27 years old. Now, I'm going to give you a brief aside about me. I partied hard like an idiot. And then when I finally put all that down, I got driven and focused on the arts and music and really focused on everything that I'm doing. But you've been doing that, it sounds like your whole life.
Yeah, it's funny is I just had a conversation with somebody recently that was really just funny in general, but they were asking me like, when did you decide you were going to do music? And I was like trying to recall, and there was never like a moment I decided to do this. This is just simply what I was going to do, if that makes any sense. Like nothing, like when I started playing music as a young teenager, I just simply was like, oh, like I'm going to be a musician. Like I didn't consciously make the decision. Like it just was like, oh, this is what I do. And it's been like that perpetually since I was, 13 at this point. So
yeah, I get that. So you've just always been doing it and you're here now, it sounds like.
Yeah. I mean, obviously I've faltered over the years and like taken breaks or, been more relaxed on it or XYZ. You go through 6 months where, writing is not what you want to do, or you want to pursue other hobbies. But it's like, I know I'm taking a rest from music. It's not like I ever set it down. It's just like, oh, I have to allot some time to another thing for a little while, and then I'm going to come back to this more rejuvenated.
Where are you living these days?
I live in Portland, Oregon. I'm born and raised in Oregon. So I've been here for about almost 10 years this year.
How do you like it?
I love it. I think, being from Oregon is like, a very specific part of my character and the way I was raised and part of my identity. So it's like it's a double-edged sword. Obviously, there's bad stuff too about living here, but there's bad stuff about living everywhere.
I hear the drug culture there is pretty wild. Like it's a lot out on the streets, that kind of thing. Is that true?
Yeah, that's definitely true. Well, what's funny is it's like, obviously I just did like the whole US on this last tour, and I got home, and my synth and guitar player Cameron, he also lives in the city, and we were just talking about how every American city is just the same exact thing. It's just in like different phases of degrading, like how far is it fallen apart already? And I was just like, like obviously Portland has problems, but like also you go to other cities and it feels like a playground in contrast. You know what I mean? Like, like a city that has real issues is like a place like St. Louis, where like they left that place behind. So it's like, at least here I see, gnarly things from time to time, but also there's a mountain an hour and a half away, and like the city's surrounded by these beautiful hills with the forest all over them. And then I'm an hour and a half from the ocean. Like it's one of the most beautiful places in the United States. And like, if that's the give and the take, you know what I mean, then I'm going to take that, because I could have the same city life anywhere else, but scenically, like the way the city looks and feels, I think it's pretty uniquely the Northwest. Like Seattle too. Seattle has a bunch of problems, but I'm hard pressed to say any city in the Midwest or on the East Coast looks as beautiful as Seattle does.
Yeah, whenever I see pictures from the Northwest, it's incredible. Last time I was in Portland was 2002. I was on tour with a friend's band, helping them out, selling merch, and I still remember it. I still remember being at my friend's house and seeing one of those hills with all the forest on it, and it's still like burned in my memory. It's a beautiful place.
Yeah, it's I love it. I can't imagine living anywhere else, and like in the United States at least. Like I would probably leave the country before I move to another state at this point.
You grew up in Medford, Oregon, yes?
Yeah, outside of it, but it's easier to categorize it as Medford.
How was it there?
So very rural, not a lot of subculture, very simple, but also, Medford and Southern Oregon in general is a place of like very Republican-esque ideas, lots of lack of education. Like, the high school I went to was like the lowest paid teachers in the state of Oregon, and they used to go on strikes all the time. And a lot of people just trying to make ends meet, but it is also beautiful. It's kind of like a playground for, especially as a teenager, there's not a lot to do, but it's also really hard to get in trouble for being an idiot, which I'm really grateful for. There's not like street cops just walking around, you know what I mean, to like bust me for being an idiot as a teenager. But the seclusion of where I grew up, I think, is like the thing that I love and miss about it the most. I grew up like, I'm actually from a town called Rogue River, which is like 30 miles outside of Medford, but it's like, you wouldn't know it. It's just it's a freeway sign, but it's like 2,000 people. And I grew up like a couple miles outside of there, up at like a pretty long dirt road. And I didn't necessarily have a lot of access to the world and like culture. So I think it kind of forged me to seek it out, via the internet, or like just being really obsessive about the things I like. So it's an interesting place. It's a weird place to like summarize. Every person I know that's like ever been there has been like, this is one of the weirdest places I've ever been. But it's like it's a shithole, but it's my shithole. Is like the feeling I have about it.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, that's how I feel about my hometown. It's like, I'm allowed to talk badly about it, but no one else is, especially if you're not from there.
Exactly. It's like having a sibling. I'm allowed to bully my brother. You're not allowed to bully my brother.
Exactly. What was it like going to school there? When I was going to school, it was pretty classic jocks versus everybody else still. If you liked music, you were mostly weird unless you listened to Dave Matthews Band or whatever. How was it for you?
It was, I think the thing for me is like, so like going to elementary, middle school, and some high school in Rogue River was like, I grew up with these kids from the time I moved there in like fourth grade until I left. And so it wasn't like there was new people. We would get like 2 new kids a year, and that was it. So it was really strange because you would watch people grow into the subcultures they like or whatever, but also people were still bullies. So you would get bullied by a kid you'd known since fourth grade for wearing tight pants and listening to alternative music. You know what I mean? You're like, what the hell, dude? Like, I remember you peeing your pants in the cafeteria like 5 years ago, dude. Like, but yeah, like, I mean, I definitely, got some flack to say the least as a teenage boy, with black straightened hair and like fucking skinny jeans and listening to like, fucking weird metal and stuff. It was like, it's like classic, like, you know what I mean? Getting called the F slur at school for just walking by, and like, you're like, okay, well, like I was just existing, but you know what I mean? All of a sudden my identity becomes something I have to defend. And like the things I enjoy become a thing that I'm like, oh, well, now you're like, it's almost like gatekeeping, but not from the community you're trying to join. It's like you have to be really vindicated in what you love to fight against people trying to be assholes about it.
Okay. I was curious if all that is still going on, and it sounds like a resounding yes, because I went through those same things you're describing.
Yeah. And I don't know how it is now because obviously subculture has like melted down to like these really big, vats, I guess, of like emo is like not a thing anymore. Like it's not what it was. Like emo could mean you like rap music now, and like you like a specific branch of rap music, and it could also mean that you like Slipknot, and you might have heard one My Chemical Romance song. So I don't know how much that goes on, but it seems like it could be reversed because I see young kids wearing like baggy pants now and dressing like how my dad did when I was a kid. So maybe if you wear skinny jeans again, you're getting re-bullied. Like, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think skinny jeans are out now, and it's back to baggier stuff.
Yeah, which is very interesting because it's like you don't know the fight that we all fought for that to be okay. And then, yeah, they just went back.
It'll cycle back around. It's fine.
Yeah.
What about your taste in music? What grabbed you? What did you gravitate towards when you were younger? Like for me, I mean, grunge and the alternative explosion in the mid 90s was huge for me. And then discovering hardcore in the late 90s, that was life changing for me. And then emo and then post rock, discovering all the different genres throughout the years. Give me some of your trajectory.
Yeah. So like when I was young, my mom's ex-husband was a rapper. So a lot of like my early exposure to music was through my parents, but my parents are really young. Like my parents were like 19 or 20 when they had me. So my father was like loved like Pantera and like all that stuff that came out in the 90s when he was like a young teenager, and like loved Danzig, but also like loved Eminem and like loved rhyme sayers and like all that Midwest rap. So like that was super important to me. And then my mom was like a retired rivet head, you know what I mean? So she was like when I started getting into music, my mom was like, oh, you have to listen to this band Skinny Puppy. Like you'll love Skinny Puppy. And then being like, there's this band called Mr. Bungle. Like my mom liked a lot of like the more a little deeper in the subculture. Obviously Skinny Puppy's huge and famous, but so that sort of stuff was from my mom. And then my stepdad was really into like Bay Area rap music. So like Devin the Dude and like Mac Dre. And I used to go to the studio with him when he would record and just like sitting there. And those are like my first memories of being like, I love the studio. Like I didn't know what it was. It felt like this like magical place where I was just watching this guy behind a board. And that sort of, all those things started to amalgamate. And then like by the time I was like, I don't know, 10, I made friends with a kid that was like a classic metalhead. So he liked Sabbath and Maiden and Priest and like, Metallica and all that stuff. And went into that. And then by the time I was about 12, my cravings for like scarier music got pretty high after I found Slayer. And then from there, I kind of like got into all of like the alternative types of metal music. I attribute like this one really specific moment to like the trajectory of everything. But I rode the bus with two sisters, and one sister was in my grade, grew up with her, and the older sister was like a couple years older than us, and she wore like a battle vest and had like leopard print hair and like piercings and stuff, and like just looked cool. But I gave my iPod to her younger sister and was like, "Will you go home and download all of her music onto my iPod and like delete everything I've ever had and like download what your sister listens to because I want to know." And they had like so much music, like hours and hours of music. And so I went from the classics and like liking some rap music and to like finding like scary kids scaring kids and like Entombed in like the same week. And like because it was like there was no gatekeeping, it was just like internet music at that point, like you were just grabbing what you could.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I like found some mallcore stuff, loved like some old death metal stuff, loved Napalm Death and like Vader. And then I think I was about 14, I'd kind of like burnt myself on listening to all that because I like was obsessively just finding new albums and like listening to them on repeat. And then I have an older friend, and he was into that stuff, but it kind of transitioned out and was like, always the cool guy. And he was like, "Dude, I got to show you this band, Converge." And he showed me Converge, Wolves in the Throne Room, Crystal Castles, and Fear Before the March of Flames in the same day. And that changed everything for me. That was the whole trajectory of my life changed from that moment on. So like I was into all that stuff. I was into heavy stuff, and he started showing me a lot of like niche electronic subculture that I liked a lot, and showing me like a lot of like underground rap stuff that was like really noisy production, and then like more of the traditional hardcore stuff, and then like a lot of black metal stuff that was like third wave like atmospheric stuff. And that kind of just spiraled for me.
Wow. So it sounds like there wasn't a big group of people gatekeeping or to bounce things off of necessarily. Like when I got into this music, the first big show I went to, Dillinger played, Dillinger Escape Plan, Converge. I saw them both in the same day, and it changed my whole life. I didn't know music like that existed. I was scared for my life. I thought I was going to get killed. It was awesome. I was hooked from that day until now. But it was like you just get indoctrinated with these beliefs. Like I stopped listening to almost everything I was listening to before. I was like, oh, this is the music now. And I only liked the most popular bands. And I don't know. I just had weird criteria for what I liked and what I don't like. And it was very specific. And I think it's just like that when you're 17, 18 years old. But it sounds like you were just taking everything in, which is good.
Yeah. Well, it's like, our shows, even where I grew up, it was like, VFW halls, like community centers, and then like a venue would pop up. It would get shut down 2 months later. So like we didn't have enough bands for it to be like, these are the hardcore bands in town. You know what I mean? So you'd have a hardcore band playing with like a Chariot style band, like a Dillinger style band, playing with like a Devil Wears Prada style band, playing with like, some sort of like strange indie rock band. And those would be our lineups because that's what we had. So, and I think because of that, there was like nobody at the show to be like, "Oh, this sucks." It was just like, we're just stoked that we can have a concert because nobody comes here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I didn't find any of the gatekeeping stuff until, I got older and started like getting into more and more niche stuff. And then it's like, I got really into technical death metal for like a couple years there. And it's like, yeah, everybody that's a technical death metal, not everyone, but a lot of technical death metal fans are very particular about like what makes the cut. Black metal people are very particular about what makes the cut. So like, meeting other people that likes black metal and then being like Wolves in the Throne Room is one of my favorite bands of all time. And they're like, that's not even real black metal. Like, you're a poser. And I was like, oh, that's weird.
I knew it. Yeah, that black metal fans in particular, from my experience, are some of the most let me find the right word to use here. Particular about what constitutes black metal and what doesn't.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is like hilarious because it's like, they're like, it has to sound bad or like, something like that. And I'm just like, I think, you know what I mean? I think it's a vibe. I don't think it's a recording style. I don't think it's, you know what I mean? I don't even think it's necessarily the vocals. It's just a feeling. If it feels like black metal, then it is,
You know what? You just reminded me. When I was young, people would use the word overproduced way too much. Like, oh, this is overproduced. So what, like having good production is bad?
Yeah.
Why would that be bad?
Well, and it's like, I understand that because that topic will never die. It's still going to this day. And it's like, I understand when you like listen to, there's like popular alternative bands now and like the drums sound fake, like it sounds like a computer did that. I understand if you don't like that, but it's like, if it's live recordings, like it's a drummer and like they edit some of the kick drums every once in a while because they're trying to do something that's hard for a human being to be able to do. Like, it's like, what are recording tools other than to like get to the next level of a musical process, to like get to a new creative space? Like, I don't understand that ideology necessarily. Like, I get it when it's like, okay, like this doesn't sound like a band playing anymore, but it's like, oh, they added a synthesizer to their song. That's not cool. That's like a studio trick. And it's like, don't you want music to sound like something you've never heard before eventually? Like, that's what I want.
Right. No, you're right on that. I agree. There's a fine line. And I think if you're on that line, it's fine.
Yeah.
When did you start creating music and how? Did you get started by yourself making beats and everything?
So, I wrote songs on my guitar when I was a young teenager, and I moved to Minnesota to live with my mom, and I didn't know anybody. So I downloaded FL Studio like the year before. I re-downloaded it when I got to Minnesota because I was like, oh, if I want to do anything, I have to record myself. Like, I got to figure out how to record guitar. And I started recording guitar, and my mom had taken in who is now my older brother, and he was a rapper, but he basically saw me working in my DAW one day and was like, you should learn how to make beats. And I was just like, okay, cool. Like, sounds fun, and yeah. So in tandem, I'm like trying to record like, technical guitar stuff and looking at videos about production and whatnot. And I just kept doing that until all of a sudden it was like, here I am recording my own songs, like kind of out of nowhere. It just like seamlessly happened. So it was a lot of it has to do with like the production side of things, me making beats and like learning my way around DAWs. And then, also like, musicianship sounds like a pretentious word, but just in the fact that like, I know how to play guitar and all that stuff, and be like, oh, like people sample guitar, why would I sample guitar? I could just play a guitar riff and like make it sound like a sample. Those things in tandem kind of built up to being like, okay, well, now I'm just writing my own songs and recording everything.
Yeah, I like that you took the initiative to just learn to do it yourself too. I mean, being in the age of being able to download a DAW and figure it out and watch videos on everything is great. If softwares and all that stuff, well, okay, the softwares were around at that time, but had they been as available, maybe I would have used them. Who knows?
Well, it's like accessibility has gone up so much. So it's like, I talk about this all the time, but like the internet can either be the worst thing or the best thing in the world, depending on how you use it. And like for me, I was just jokingly call it YouTube Academy, but like most everything I've ever learned is just like, somebody's asked a question that you asked. So if you know what you need to ask, you can look it up, you can find out. And there's people on YouTube that just make free like content, like it's school, where they'll just be like, I just want to share this knowledge. And if you have the question, then you can find the answer, is what I've learned over the years. And like, it's so accessible now that it's like, it not to be like, there's no excuses, but to a degree, it's like, if you are passionate about the thing you want to do, then if there's a will, there's a way, and it's easier now to find information about the thing you love and how you want to pursue it more than ever.
No, I think about that because if someone wants to do something, but they never look up on YouTube how to do it, I know this is judgmental, but I think, oh, they don't really want to do it because everything is on YouTube. You can look up everything on YouTube. I learned how to live stream on Twitch from YouTube. I learned how to do this podcast from YouTube. I hope to learn to use a DAW more from YouTube in the future. I mean, it's all there. And by the way, I was thinking about this recently. The people who make those videos, those professional videos to walk you through the simplest things. One day I was watching one and I was like, who are these people? Like, they're angels. Like the fact that they took the time to make this video and I'm sitting here now watching it to learn to do this thing. Like, I love these people.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, even like, I use Ableton nowadays. Ableton has like a whole YouTube channel dedicated to just like showing you how to do things in the new version of the DAW. And here's a creative way you could write music with it. Like, that stuff's invaluable. If you have the wherewithal to find it, like, there's no need to, there's no blockades really other than yourself is how I feel.
It's true. How old are you when you're living in Minnesota?
I believe I was 15 and I made it 9 months before I came back to Oregon.
Ah, why? You just didn't like it there? It wasn't working out with your mom? What was going on?
Yeah, a little bit of all of that. Not necessarily my mom, but lived near a lot of family who I did not get along with. And there was like, I just found that place super abysmal for me. We were living near a lot of my family who were troubled people, to put it nicely. So, yeah, we were coming back to Oregon to visit. And when my mom was like, oh, we're going to go to Oregon, so, we can see your family and friends or whatever, I basically just told her I'm not coming back. Like, if you buy me a ticket to go there, I'm going to sleep on couches. And I'm not coming home. And she was like, for sure. And that's what I did until my mom eventually moved to Oregon, like about a year later.
Oh, so you actually stayed and couch surfed until she came back?
Yeah.
Was that rough? You had to be what, 15, 16 years old?
16. Yeah, it wasn't too bad. I had actually, like, the reason I moved to be with my mother is because I was already homeless before then. So I was couch hopping and, staying with friends and, kind of gallivanting, doing whatever I wanted. So I had already built a friend group of people who were like, took care of each other, I will say. So even my friend who, showed me Converge and all that stuff, when I came back to Oregon, he was like, you can stay at my apartment. Like, you're good, dude. He was like 18, 19 maybe. And it was fine. Like, it was just like a lot of like me hanging out with people who were better at music than me, and me just like a sponge, just asking people about how they play guitar, how they do this. Like, oh, this thing that I don't. So like, can you show me? And then, I stayed in Oregon basically till right before my like 18th birthday. I moved to Portland when I was like 17 with a lot of friends.
So you said you ended up homeless before your mom moved to Minnesota?
Before I moved to my mother's house in Minnesota, yeah. My mom's lived in Minnesota basically my whole life.
I got you. How did you end up homeless? Because she was out there and there was just nobody to stay with back in Oregon?
Yeah. So, very candid, but like, my mother is an addict. She's been clean for quite a few years now. But in this time frame, my mother was very, very absent, very, very gone. And my father had gone through a divorce. He kind of went off the deep end, and I ended up getting kicked out by him. And so my mother was like, in rehab, getting her life together, trying to do the thing. And my father and I were butting heads extremely badly. And so, he basically was like, get out of my house. And I just was like, cool. The determination in me to just be like, well, I'm going to make it work just to spite you, was just grand enough that I just made it happen, I guess, like as a 15-year-old, which is psychotic to think about now. You know what I mean? I'm the oldest of like 4 siblings. So thinking about them being on their own at 15 would be insane to me.
So you're the oldest of 4 siblings.
Mm-hmm.
Where are they? Did they stay with your dad, or were some of them with your mom?
Yeah. So my parents never married. I'm the only one from their union. My younger brother, Adric, he's a model now. He lives part-time in New York City. He's doing really well for himself. And then my other sister lives in Los Angeles. And then my 2 other siblings live back in Minnesota with my mother.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm glad to hear that your mom got help and is doing better. I went through the same thing in my life. So it's hard. It's hard, but if you can make it through it and maintain the clean lifestyle day by day, then that's where you want to be.
100%. I can say with a lot of stoked to eat my words, but my mother's 4 years sober, I believe, this year, and my mom's almost 50 years old, and it feels like she's finally getting to live her life for the first time. So
I love that. Yes, shout out to Yosef's mom. I hear these stories every day, every week. It's never too late. So I'm always happy when somebody gets a hold of it and can put together some semblance of a normal life. It's never too late.
100%. Yeah. I mean, it's like, leaps and bounds. It still like amazes me sometimes, you know what I mean? Because my siblings are young enough that they weren't around for a lot of stuff. They saw, nonetheless, they saw some gnarly things, but they didn't see the early stages of my mother, like when I was a kid. So like the fact that my mother has grown and changed so much, it's like, it's a different person to me sometimes, where I got to be like, oh, wow, like you've changed, like you've really grown. You're not you that I knew anymore. You're a new, better person.
Exactly. People say to me, "Oh, I thought you would just be dead." And I was like, "Yeah, me too."
100%.
Do you talk to your dad at all still?
I do not.
Okay. Okay. So
yeah.
I guess no plans for that in the immediate future.
Yeah, not necessarily, but I think in the era of just like, for me and myself coming into like the latter part of my 20s, I'm looking at my 30s now. It's just my life is self-sustaining, and it's something I've built on my own, and giving space to people who do not add to it and perpetually stress me out and do not change or grow is not a thing I'm doing anymore.
That's good. That's a good outlook. So you moved to Vancouver, Washington when you were 18, yes?
Yeah. So I lived in Portland for about a year. I did have a brief stint going home, and then I came back up here, lived in Portland proper for like probably 3 years, and then I moved to Vancouver, Washington, which is across the water from Portland. It's like 5 miles away, and lived there for a couple of years too.
And is this where you really started getting out there in the world of music? I know you made some beats and sent them to XXX Tentacion, and ended up working with him.
That whole time frame happened when I was 18. So I was in Portland for about a year, give or take, with the going home for a couple months thing. But yeah, I mean, I was a child when all of that happened, and I had already started from like, when I moved back to Oregon and my mom came back, I kind of had like a consistent space, if you will, where it was just like, oh, I have my room, my stuff. And I went through this phase for probably about 7 months, where I didn't really leave the house. I just sat inside and I would just work on music. Like I just would watch videos of people making music, watch interviews, watch production techniques, and I was in a band at the same time. So I would like write music for my band and then try to make beats, and write music for my band and try to make beats. And like, I just did that nonstop. And so by the time I moved to Portland, there was like this year of growth in my production and like knowing myself and like what I wanted to do musically, that by the time I got to Portland, I was like kind of primed and ready when I started meeting people. Like I could execute pretty quickly on the fly to be like, oh, like you want this type of beat. Like I'll just make that for you in front of you right now to like show you that I'm dedicated and I want to work. And I kept doing that. And then, met quite a few people very rapidly because, producers are an interesting breed of people, or beat makers, I should say, where like, there's either hyperactive ones or there's like, I make a really good instrumental, one of the best ones you've ever heard in your life, but it takes me 2 months to like have that creativity. And so because I was willing to work and quickly, like I feel like I met people really, really fast, and got kind of opened up to the world of SoundCloud, where I'd already been uploading things and like had friends on there, but I would just like, listen through SoundCloud all the time and like just deep dive to find new people I wanted to work with, and like people whose production I thought was cool, and like study them and like what, like, chronologically listen to a discography and be like, how did this change? And like, what techniques are they using? And those people would end up becoming my friends and showing me how to do things just simply because I was like really hungry to learn it. And yeah, in that time frame, I'm sending out beats to people, X being one of those people, Ski being one of those people. It just was like a very fertile time when it came to like the cross pollination of music and the internet working together.
So what happens? You just send it out to X, and then he gets in touch with you and says, "Yeah, let's do this."
So I sent him one instrumental, and what's funny is it samples the first Entomb song I ever heard, and I just DM'd it to him on Instagram or on Twitter. I didn't know him, but I had heard he at this time frame, like to put into the metric of like internet, he had like 3,000 followers on SoundCloud. So he was just like this underground person who was making like really aggressive, scary rap music. And so I'd send it to him because I'd heard like a 45-second teaser of a song. And he hit me up the same night and was like, yeah, would love to use this. Send me a download. Send it to him. Didn't hear from him. Randomly, he dropped that song. Everybody was like, whoa, you produced for that guy? And I was like, yeah. And then he got booked to play a show in Portland and hit me up and was like, hey, you live in Portland? And I was like, yes. And he was like, cool, I'll see you soon. I'm playing a show there. And this is like probably his third concert ever at this point. And when he came to Portland, him and Ski came, but what was not communicated to me is what he meant was, I'm going to stay at your house for like 3 days before the show.
He didn't even say that. He just said, hey, I'll be there. I'll see you soon.
Yeah. And then he like called me, like asked me for my number and was like, hey, I'm in Portland. Where do you live? Like,
don't you wish you could operate like, sometimes I wish I could operate like that. I worry so much about asking people for things or offending people or upsetting anybody. I wish I could just not care and just be like that and just be like, hey, I'll be there. I'll call you, and then just show up.
Yeah, it's like, I think also too is it's like, he was 17. Come to find out,
yeah.
I mean, he was a child too. Like we were both kids, and so the way he was operating in that time frame was obviously like very psychotic and very hectic to be around. But yeah, he came to my house. Was like, you play guitar, right? And I was like, yeah. And I played a guitar riff. It was the first thing I played on the guitar. And he was like, can you record that right now? Recorded it, wrote a song, dropped it 2 hours later. And that was
just like that.
Yeah. And then he was like, can you write another one? I was like, what do you want? And then, he described a song to me and I was like, okay. And then I wrote that, we recorded that. And then he had another demo laying around and he put out an EP like the next day.
Wow.
Yeah. It was not very calculated. It wasn't like, what I mean? There was like, I'm not thinking about the future or the past. It was just like, oh, right now we're writing a song. And then obviously that whole ordeal blew up into this like huge giant thing, which was like absolutely psychotic to watch, You
showed X how to scream properly too, because he was doing some screaming on a song for the first time, right? In that style?
Yeah. Which is how I ended up recording vocals on that song. And he basically was like trying to make aggressive music and like had this perception of what it was. And he told me like every time he yells, he blows his voice out. And I was like, oh, like there's like a way to do it that's correct, And so I was just showing him like how to breathe from his diaphragm and how to project that and, etc. But, one of those things that happens in the moment that becomes like becomes lore and you don't really realize it's happening. And then it's like, oh yeah, that's kind of crazy,
Yeah. What is that EP that you guys worked on? I'm curious to go back and listen to that.
It was called Willy Wonka was a child murderer. And it's because we were watching Willy Wonka and I gave them a synopsis of like this whole theory I'd read about how it's kind of crazy that, every murder in that, like every kid that has something bad happen to them, it's like the boat all of a sudden has enough seats for the amount of people that are only going to be there, not for the ones that had disappeared, as if everything's being anticipated that kids are going to disappear as time goes on.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. It was just like a funny theory.
When you think about
Yeah. It was just like a weird internet theory I had been like reading about like the day before. So when they were watching it, I was like, oh, I just read a thing about this. But yeah, I mean, those songs are not necessarily like great songs to me anymore, but they're definitely time frame adolescence. Like it feels like a very specific moment in time.
So this whole time, are you working on material that would become King Yosef?
Not necessarily. So like King Yosef kind of is born out of, I was in a metalcore sort of hardcore band that I was writing most everything for. And it was like a thing where, like, I would write the songs and like book the studio time and everybody else would learn everything. And that band kind of fell apart once I had moved to Portland. And so in tandem, like my production was getting heavier and a little gnarlier, and that band dissolved. So it was like all the like aggression side of that kind of just like started pinpointing into a new direction. And it kind of just like was birthed out of that. Like I was like, oh, well, I don't have a band, but like everything I was writing for the band was what I want to do anyway. So like I'll just keep doing that.
Did it start with, I guess it started with just you, right?
Yeah. Yeah, as far as like the music side of thing goes, like my friends every once in a while will like, like help with the guitar part, or I'll bounce ideas off of everything. But to this day, it's still just like me alone in a room writing is how King Yosef is born.
So it's you by yourself making the songs at home on the computer. What do you do? Do you start posting it on SoundCloud? Do you just start getting it out there? What do you do?
Yeah, I was just posting on SoundCloud originally. Like, I remember the time frame where I uploaded to Spotify, and that was like a thing where I was like, oh yeah, I should upload it to streaming. Like, but that was like a year into me releasing music on the internet, at least as King Yosef.
And when does it start to get traction, and with who first?
Definitely like the SoundCloud like people were very early on supporters of it, and I was just kind of using the space as like fun. Like it was a place for me to experiment. Like I was like, oh, I want to write this type of song, and I don't know what King Yosef is actually. I just like want to release music, and waiting for like doing production stuff or being in a band takes forever. Waiting for somebody to possibly use your beat when you've made 100, you know what I mean? And maybe one of them gets used, gets pretty defeating after a while. So I kind of was just using the space to be like, oh, like I just want to write a song and release it. So I will. And through that trial and error, I think is when I started to kind of dial in like what King Yosef was going to be. And like it was many evolutions and changes of just like even people who were listening, because some people would come just because they were like producer kids or like, fellow sort of like, oh, I like am just on the internet, like listening to people and how they do stuff because I'm learning too. Or it would be like SoundCloud listeners or like some hardcore people, some people from metal. And, I guess to a degree, it's still kind of that. I think it's just less SoundCloud nowadays.
When do you start performing live? How does that happen? Like, what was the first show like? What was the configuration?
So I would say that's when the time frame of like what King Yosef would become was kind of finalized to me. I had been spending a lot of time in the latter half of like 2019. Most of 2019 was like I didn't really release very much music, and I just was at home, just writing, like constantly trying to figure out what I was doing and kind of doing this soul search. And then I made like 5 songs that would, be on an EP that never got released. And one of them being the song Pity Case. And that was like the first song where I was like, oh, this is me. Like, this is a King Yosef song. Like, the sonics of this and like the way it feels like, I was like, I can picture this live. I understand like where this could go now. And I got offered a show right before or after that song was released. And so I just knew that I couldn't, like I love rap music. I love producing for rappers, but the whole, it's just an MP3 track with your vocals on it. And performing over that was like not what I was going to do. I've only ever performed with like a band. So I was like, this has to feel like, I want it to feel like a hardcore band or like a metal band. So it was a drummer. And then we would go through and cut all the synths up. And I had a friend perform like chops, like, the same way you would if you were beat making on like an MPC. where they would be triggered. So like I was like, it has to still have an element of this can go wrong. Like this has to be able to fall apart, and there has to be like a danger to it, because otherwise it doesn't feel like live performance. And yeah, so the first show was February 2023 or 2020. And then obviously I played a show directly after that, like 2 weeks later, and then the world shut down. So within that time frame, I had already started working on what would become an underlying hum, and kind of like backseated everything else while COVID was happening. And I was like, well, I think I know where this needs to go. I think I understand what my music sounds like now. Like I understand where I want to grow and learn and about myself. And then undertook writing that whole project, obviously. That was years of work. And then came back playing shows, I think in 2021. The end of 2021, Dying Wish asked me to open the slot for their album release show for their debut record. And that since then, it's kind of just been like more and more and more touring and shows. But it's always been a 3-piece. So it's always been a drummer, synth and guitar, and then myself.
That's really interesting that you said you wanted it to be able to go wrong. Like something has to be able to go wrong. That's such an interesting approach. Like, I like it though, because it keeps it real, right? It adds that element of danger to it.
Well, it's like the tension, you know what I mean? Like I like the whole idea, like when I say that I like figured out what King Yosef was, like the idea to me was I'm taking organic and inorganic things and I'm pushing them together so hard that it's hard to tell where the line is anymore. Like that became my mission statement probably at the end of 2019. And when it came to live, like I was, like the tension of playing with other people and knowing that you can, respectfully fuck up, like that feels like a churning wheel to me. Like that's a driving thing. And being able to like be like, oh, like we're doing something different and weird, but like we can be good at the thing that we're doing differently. Like that has always been something that helps drive me. And being able to play with like a drummer and being like, oh, you missed that snare hit. So now because you missed that snare hit, I have to like perform harder because I don't want people to notice that. It's like this little cycle that perpetuates itself to like push everything forward live to me.
How can it mess up in terms of the person doing the sampling and guitar? You said they cut up the samples and they're pushing it out. Like, what can go wrong there?
So like, it's easier on like a track by track basis, but like there's songs where like, every single synth part you hear in the song is on pads and section by section. And it's not like guitar, I can't tell Cameron to be like, play 0, 1, 3, 4. That's the riff. It's like these are patterns that are made up by him and I, that only him and I know. And like if he doesn't trigger those just don't play, or they play off time, or like, and like you can hear things going wrong. And it's like kind of the balance of like the machine and like making it human at the same time. Is like, there are times where like we will mess up parts, and that like that tension and that the way that builds and the way it feels, you need to prove yourself after that. There's like a lot of room for error on the Cameron side of the, on the live performance, which is like why he's the guy who does it, is because I trust him.
Does it go wrong sometimes?
Yeah, absolutely. And you got to just, there'll be parts where all of a sudden it's just me and drums for like 15 seconds. And it's like, I have to adapt to that. Like that's how performance works. Things go wrong. Things aren't always perfect. And how do you respond to those things in the moment?
How do you respond to them after the show? Do we have to sit down and be like, all right, next time try this? Or like, how do you work through those things as a band?
I think the thing for me is like the crew I have right now is like, I understand that they're helping me bring my vision to life. You know what I mean? And they're trying to do the best they can at that. So there's a lot of self-accountability within the crew, which I like. We're all very like, we'll talk about the set after every show and ask each other how we felt about it, how we could be stronger. And it's never like, none of us have to look at the other one and be like, you fucked this up, and like throw a fit about it or be accusatory, because everybody's really open and honest. And I feel like has a lot of humility with each other to be like, I didn't feel very good about this one tonight. I think these are things that I can improve on, or I missed this part, or I missed this snare drum, or, Cameron will be like, I missed the pad in this part of the song. I need to like be more mindful of that. But it's we do constant reviews, or like we will, if people are like posting on Instagram and like sharing videos of the show that night, it's like we'll go through them and like listen to the songs together and how they come across live, and like what do we like about it, what do we not like about it, how can we change that, how can we like make it better.
I like that system. I like that system because everybody's just holding themselves accountable.
Yeah, 100%. And I love my whole crew for that. Even my photographer TM, she's amazing at what she does and is constantly like trying to push herself forward. And we had a sound guy for this health run, and he was like, oh, I didn't think about that. Like, what can I do for you that's going to make it easier? And like, I want to get better in these ways. Like, I've always been of the mind when it comes to like, you could have like the best drummer in the world, but their personality could suck, or like you could have someone who's fucking great at guitar, but like they can't do anything else. I would rather people that are like growing and learning. I would rather like work with people like that and us grow and learn together and get better as a unit than like have people that can execute on the highest level, like performance wise, but like can't do any of the other parts of it, like just on a person level,
Right. They might be the best musician in the world, but when you talk to them, they're like a stone pillar. That's no fun.
Exactly. So it's like, my crew is my best friends, and it's like, I couldn't ask for a better setup, honestly. It makes everything just more fun, and it's like when you're in the depths of a tour and you're 3 weeks in and you've only slept 4 hours, like 4 nights in a row, and you're driving for 9 hours to play a show in a city that, you don't know how the turnout's going to be. Like, those are the moments that really matter, and being able to laugh with those people and like be able to acknowledge to each other, like, oh, we're all grumpy assholes right now, and laugh about it because we all know each other. Like, that's invaluable.
Exactly. Yeah, I do the same thing. Like, if I wait too long to eat, I become a maniac. So if sometimes there would be a time where it's like everyone's taking too long to go eat, and I'm like, guys, I apologize. This is an emergency situation. I have to eat right at this moment, or bad things are going to happen. And everyone's like, nope, we understand. And then I just run off by myself.
Yep, exactly.
It's just, I think it's recognizing those moments and doing what you need to do to keep yourself sane on the road. It's important.
Yeah, 100%. And everybody knows each other well enough to be able to read each other and be like, oh,
yeah,
this is what's happening for you right now. That's cool. I can mind my own business or help you do this thing. So
an underlying hum, the 2023 record. You said you began to really work on this during the lockdown, yes?
Yeah. So the initial demos of it came in the end of 2019. And I kind of set out to be like, everything before an underlying hum, really before Pity Case, is just like, it's just like me every once in a while hitting the mark, but the rest of it just being like, I want to write a type of song. This was the first time I like slated to be like, what do I need to say? And what does it mean to me? And like, if I don't give myself to this, then what is it worth? And so I just started chipping away at writing for a long time, from 2019 to, I think, recorded that album in the late summer of 2021. And then obviously maybe even 2022, not sure, but to its release in 2023, it's like, the whole thing was DIY and done with my friends, and like took a lot lyrically to like get to a place where I was like, okay, I'm risking things by saying this, I guess, emotionally and not in like any other circumstance, but to give myself to a project where I felt like I could walk away from it and look back on it in like 5 or 10 years. And I might not like everything about it, but I can say that I was honest and respect my younger self for doing that.
I've read that an underlying hum is a concept record about your experience in therapy and dealing with some of your past. Is that correct?
Yeah. So, upon deciding I wanted to write an album, I talked to my therapist, who's still my therapist to this day, been my therapist for 6 years now. And I was saying that I feel like if I'm going to continue to make music, I need to do something that feels like I'm giving myself to it. I was not getting a lot of gratification out of music anymore. And it's because I wasn't being honest and using it like as the vessel it's supposed to be. And my therapist basically was like, I think if you want to write an album, I think you're going to have to dive in really deep, and it's going to hurt a lot and take you to some really dark places. But I think you should use this as like a vessel to leave a lot of things behind. And so I kind of did this in tandem with my therapist, where I would be like, this thing has been on my mind a lot lately, or this came to the surface for me lately. And, and then each song kind of was like representative of a person, place, or time frame that I kind of got to trap in a place where I can visit it whenever I want now, but it's not really a part of me because I said my piece on it.
Was that the first time you had ever done something like that on this record?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I just felt as if I was not being as forthcoming with myself. Not that like, oh, the listeners need me to be honest or anything like that, but just genuinely where it was like, I make music. I love music. Why is it not making me feel the way it used to make me feel? Why am I not getting gratification out of this? So yeah, that album was like the first time where I was like, I'm going to be like brutally honest and visit a lot of places that I don't want to, for myself to get to the other side of it and be stronger for it.
Did it help you? Were you satisfied with the results?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like the release of that album, and like it was as if like this chapter in my life had just all of a sudden I was in a new place. Like it was very strange. It felt so many things happened so rapidly within like the 6-month time frame of it coming to like its close and like finishing the music videos and it coming out with like, I always talk about like whatever happens musically for me, there's a thing tandem that personally has to go along with it. So a lot of good and bad things happen to like push me to a new place where I feel, like there's obviously always going to be stuff. Everybody has things that like perpetually are there, but like I left so much behind that it's like all of a sudden I was a new person. I was like, wow, I can think about like the future,
Yeah. It sounds like it's important to you to always push yourself. Like with the live show, you wanted there to be stakes, right? In working with the other musicians, lyrically, you want to push yourself to open up, which it sounds like something you didn't want to do. So that sounds like a core belief for you, is that you just have to keep pushing yourself.
Yeah. There's everything's already been said by somebody and they've said it better. In that theory, there's Justin Broderick's like one of my favorite musicians of all time. Godflesh and Yasu and all those projects. But there's an interview with him where he talks about performing and making albums. And all he said was that every record's his last record and every performance is his last performance. Because to him, it makes no sense to perform and not give it so much that you could walk away from it afterwards and be like, that was okay, that was my last one. And, I feel I resonate with that belief a lot. Obviously not every show is going to be 1,000% or like, but the will to try and the push is, it's like, I feel like those are undeniable things. So it's like, even if you came to a show and everything goes wrong on the technical side of things, if we're all pushing so hard, like that's not anything you can take away from me. Like I still have that.
I like that mindset. Have you ever collaborated with Justin Broderick?
No, that's a bucket list item for me. We did get to support him last year on the last album's tour cycle. We did San Francisco and Portland, and I got to chat with him. And they say don't meet your idols, but Justin Broderick does not fall into that. But yeah, he's somebody I would absolutely. He's an amazing dude. Like when you get to meet people that like I've admired him since I was like 15. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And meet him and him treat me like a contemporary and not like a child or like a fan, you know what I mean? And have genuine conversations with me and, share knowledge and give me advice and wisdom. It's like, things that I'm like eternally grateful for. He's a super fucking sweet guy.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned him because I was thinking about him in terms of you, and I was like, these guys need to collaborate. So listen, we're saying it to the gods and spirits and whatever else out there. We need this collaboration to happen. I need it, and we know Yosef needs it.
Yeah, absolutely. If Justin ever wants to work on anything, I will, drop anything I'm doing to make that happen.
Yeah, he's the best. When Jesu first came out, I got super into them. That the first two records is when I discovered them, and I've loved him and that band ever since.
Yeah, I mean, the older I get, the more I look to like musicians that I admire, and the unwillingness to compromise, but they win. You know, uh, and
Right.
that's like, I think that's the dream always. Converge and like all those dudes too. It's like they just did what they wanted, and it worked. All they did was just not compromise. And
Right.
Justin too. It's like, that dude has every like week I get a Bandcamp notification that he released something, for one of his 100 projects. And all of those projects get respect from different communities. And all he's done is just do himself this entire time. And like, what else could you want as like a artist other than to like do exactly what you want to do and do it so uncompromisingly to get through the bad times that eventually people recognize what you've done and support you on it. For the most part, like I would like to think that Godflesh could probably tour until Justin's so old he doesn't want to do it anymore, and people are still going to show up because he's just like, it's Godflesh. You know what I mean? He did the thing. We got to show up.
Exactly. So you just finished this massive tour with Health. How did that go?
It was amazing. Touring with Health was great. Like, they're awesome people to tour with. Their crew's nice. Like, we had a lot of friends on the tour too that, came into this with like a new crew that had not toured fully together at that time. But it was a very interesting experience, because like I always thought that like this would be like a 300 capacity limit sort of project, I expected to play like at hardcore venues with like hardcore bands on bad sound systems, and I've done DIY touring, a couple times, and that's what it was. So to go from like we played, with Converge, and those rooms were like 500, 700 cap, which is like big for me. Like I was like, wow, like I can't believe I'm playing these venues that I've heard about. And then to like the direct follow up US tour is playing with them, and their crowd shows up early for every single night. Their room was always full when we performed. And then to be like, I'm playing venues that like are legendary that I've heard about for like years, and be like, this is crazy. And then to have an audience receive me well and people be so nice was like, it was insane. Like, it's an experience that I think I'm going to be processing for like a while.
That's amazing. Yeah, touring with Converge. That would be a bucket list thing for me too, because they're one of the first bands that got me into this whole thing. But I know that feeling. It doesn't even seem real. Like, I don't know, even with this podcast, like at this point I've gotten to talk to most of my heroes that I grew up listening to, and sometimes I still think, wait, is that real? Did that actually happen? It's a great feeling.
100%. I think like I'm constantly doing I my self-talk I do a lot when we're on tours, especially in the circumstance like with Converge, you know what I mean? I sat side stage every single night and would just be like, I want 14-year-old me to remember this, that like, here we are, you know what I mean? Somebody showed you Converge like 11 years ago, and here you are like playing with them. And they're people that treat you well and like want to help you out. And being on the Health tour too is like a lot of those, like being in a room and being like, oh my God, like we're playing in front of over 1,000 people right now, and being like, a lot of self-talk to like younger self, to be like 13-year-old you would not believe this, so like revel in this moment and appreciate it and like really take it for what it is right now.
How was the response for, well, let's start with the Converge show. How was the response there? It seems like a good pairing of bands to me. How was the response from the crowds?
I think, people I think not by anybody's own fault. Some people are just not going to like it, which I don't care. That's fine. But I think it's people having to understand what's happening, especially when we're playing with somebody like Converge, that's like traditional in the sense of like, there's Kurt, there's Nate, you know what I mean? There's Ben, there's Jake, like there's a singer, guitar player, bass player, drummer. That's what a band looks like to people. And people that like listen to Converge generally are like, that's what they like. So over time though, there's points in the set where I can feel like, oh, this is like a make or break moment to like make people understand. And generally speaking, like every night I felt like we would get to that point. But we were sandwiched between, Entry, who's like a band we love. Like I love Entry so much. Shouts out their singer, Sarah G. But they're like a traditional hardcore band. So they would play, then we would play. And then it was Def Club, which is, super chaotic.
Oh yeah, I love Def Club. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Converge. So it's like we were the weird band on the weird bands bill. But it was, it was still great. Like a lot of times it would be like, I don't know what you just did, but I enjoyed it, which was like, that's fine by me. I would rather be divisive than mediocre. I would rather somebody come up to me at the merch table and be like, I fucking hated everything you did, than be like, it was cool. I won't remember this,
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know again, about being younger, I don't know why, but if anything was off, I just didn't like it. Like before I even played an instrument, like if the bass player wasn't there or if someone used a drum machine, I'd be like, it's not good. But I don't think like that anymore. It could be any configuration of any instruments. It could be one person up there by themselves just screaming. Like if it's good, if it gives me those feelings, I don't care. I just want to enjoy it. I want to get that feeling.
Yeah, I think really more than anything is it's like I'm trying to elicit a response. So if I elicit a response, whether you hated it, whether you loved it, then I win to myself. You know what I mean? Like even if you booed at me, it's like, okay, well, like you're feeling something. You know what I mean? I've been to many shows where I like watch something and I'm like, this is fine. You know what I mean? And like that sucks.
No, I know what you're saying. But I like what you're doing with King Yosef. I think it's certainly unique, and I think it's a type of music, like the combination of everything you're doing. I don't think it's been done to death yet. Like it hasn't been run into the ground and buried and done by a million people. And I think you're doing it really well. So
I appreciate that.
I'm excited. Yeah, I'm excited to hear more. I'm excited to see more.
Yeah, you don't got to be the best. You just got to be different.
Exactly. Like I don't know what I'm doing, right? Musically or whatever else. It could be classified as the same as a lot of other things, but I always try to find that little angle or something that's going to make it stand out. And I think it's important to spend a little more time with it and try to find out what that is with whatever you're doing.
100%.
So you've got Roadburn coming up. Now that's exciting.
Yes. It's, it's one of those things where it's like, it won't be real until I'm there and I'm loading in.
Yeah.
Because it's like a festival that I've looked at for years and I'm like, wow, that's the coolest lineup. Like, but it is indeed happening. I'm playing some new songs that have not been even fully recorded yet. Like they're in their demo phases, which for me, pre-production is I'm just retracking when I go to the studio. So they're good to go, but I'm trying some new things and the lineup is insane. Like I'm playing with people that I admire a lot and get to see a lot of people that are like some of my favorite artists. But it's very, very interesting to be like, wow, I'm leaving home in, 3 days now. And it's to play a festival in a country I've never been to.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about. Again, taking risks. You said you're playing some new songs that aren't even 100% complete yet?
Yeah, like I have demo vocals over them and like I know the structure is right, but like the song doesn't have a name yet, but I know what it will do in a live circumstance, and that's why we're doing it.
I like that. You have your own record label as well that you mentioned earlier, BLEAKHOUSE. You self-release all your music?
Yeah, I do. Kind of BLEAKHOUSE's whole idea as an entity is that I want BLEAKHOUSE itself to be a genre, where people who don't have like the instant DIY or like built-in fan bases that other subcultures have a space to like be under an umbrella that links them together as a community.
Bleak Fest is coming up. Is this the first one you're putting on? This is a fest curated by you, correct?
Correct.
Tell us about it. Now, it will have already happened by the time you hear this, everybody, but we can keep our eyes open. Hopefully it will happen next year and we'll get to go. Yeah, so this is the first one. We're doing it DIY. We're taking over my powerlifting gym, which is just a giant warehouse. It's for us, by us. Like it's all in the family. So like security are my friends, like loaders are going to be my friends.
sound guy is like a person that's local that we've worked with before. But the lineup is supposed to be alternating between, alternative to heavy, or like not traditional to traditional. And that's kind of like the sentiment of the whole thing is I want it to be a day of like, I have been to so many hardcore metal shows that are like 6-band bills, and it's just like, it's kind of becomes brutal after a while. And so I wanted to create a space that's like, this is ours and people can come and participate and be a part of this thing with us for the day. And like, anybody's welcome to be a part of the thing that we have. But yeah, and then we're doing like an after closing ceremony sort of thing that is also like the more like industrial or like traditional electronic spaces at the Coffin Club locally. It's like our local goth club.
Nice. Man, it sounds like you have it all. You have King Yosef, you're self-producing the music, you're putting it out on your own label, and you have a local goth club that you go to. I mean, that sounds like a pretty damn good life to me.
It's pretty chill. Lots of work, but it's fun.
All right, so let's recap. Now, a lot of this will have happened already, everybody, by the time you hear this, but King Yosef is playing Roadburn. If you're there, hopefully you saw it. We have to watch videos, though. That's huge. I mean, that's going to be awesome, right?
Yeah, I'm very excited. The slot in the day, the people I'm playing next to, and I'm excited to see a lot of my friends that are performing this year too. But yeah, I'm very, very excited for Roadburn.
And we've got 2 new singles out, Mist of Pain and Dredge, some of my favorites of yours that I've heard so far. And these were recorded by Kurt Ballou and Steve Evans?
Correct.
Now, how did one do one song and one do the other? How does that work out?
What's funny is, yeah, I get asked that a lot, but so Kurt records the instrumentals and then Steve records the vocals and then Kurt mixes. I do vocal production with Steve.
That's amazing. They're like the 2 guys. Steve Evans recorded every record I loved growing up, and Kurt is Kurt. I mean, he's a legend.
Yep, same.
I love that. All right, and is there anything else coming up?
Yeah, so nothing right now. Hopefully at home writing music. That's what I'll be doing.
Well, I'm looking forward to more. And Yosef, I love the music. I'm looking forward to more. And I just want to thank you for taking the time to come on the show.
Yeah, I appreciate you. Thank you for having me.
And there you have it. King Yosef. That was a great conversation, and I'm glad King Yosef came on the show. I'm glad he was so candid with us and talking about the things he's been through, things his family has been through, the challenges he has overcome, and the work he has put in to get where he's at today. I mean, from teenage homelessness to the music that King Yosef is making now. Pretty impressive stuff, and I love what he's doing. It's a very unique sound. I love that mix of a heavy industrial and hardcore. He does it really well. There's even some like hip hop elements sometimes in the music that he does. You can still hear that hip hop influence. Sometimes it's heavy, sometimes it's lighter, sometimes it's groovy. I love it. So thank you so much, King Yosef, for coming on the show. I hope everyone out there is doing well. I'm only going to do a brief check-in here because I'm not feeling good. I'm sick with some kind of sinus thing again, and it's been a long week. But I want to tell you that next week on the show, the first week of July, we have a very big guest that I've been working years and years to get on the show, and we finally made it happen. We've got that coming up. But just remember, if you have not rated the show, give us 5 stars on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We are on the push to 300, and we need you to get there. And I thank everyone for your continued support of the show. So make sure you stick around until the end of the show, because right now we are going to speak to Rabe of Drought. Enjoy. All right, we're here now with Rabe. RJ, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, it's great to have you here. Drought has just signed with Iodine Recordings. We just put out an excellent 3-song self-titled EP. So RJ, you know what? Before I ask you about the band, where are you located?
I'm in San Francisco.
Nice. Like San Francisco proper or Oakland or?
SF proper.
Nice. Where at?
I'm in a part of the town called Noe Valley. It's kind of like south central part of SF.
How do you like it?
Oh man, I love it. I mean, I've had like a range of loving SF, hating it, being pretty indifferent, but I love it. I've been here for almost 11 years, and I'm like at an all-time high of loving it.
That's awesome. Yeah, if I had to live anywhere else, I'm in Brooklyn, but if I had to live anywhere else, I think I would want it to be SF.
I actually lived in Brooklyn for 5 years before moving to SF.
Oh, really? When?
I think I was there I always have to do backwards math because I left in 2013 and I was there for 5 years. So 2008 to 2013.
Nice. So what made you move out west?
I'm originally from Wisconsin, and I have progressively developed a distaste for being cold. And I was really into cycling and just the prospect of nice weather and like endless riding was really appealing. And like always had a little bit of a promise of a job out here, and an opportunity kind of came up and decided to go for it. I had never been here before living here, so it was a bit of a gamble, but I'm glad I did it.
Nice. Yeah. I have a distaste for hot weather now. So today, not a great day for me. I think it was 90 degrees here in the Northeast, but you know what? It hasn't been that bad yet. I'm actually turning on a fan to make myself comfortable. But when we record the podcast, RJ, I have to close the window because I'm ground level and there's a bunch of noise out on the street, as you know from living here in New York City. So I just roast for the half hour or hour and a half or whatever it is. But you know what? I do it because I love it.
I hope you have a cold beverage on hand.
Yeah, I always have a few in front of me. But RJ, tell us about Drought. When did it get started? How did it get started?
We got started, I think, like 2.5 years ago. We're kind of a COVID baby in that way. Strangely enough, our guitarist, a lot of us in the band have kind of like come back to music after having spent a long time away from it. And our guitarist, Eric, put an ad up on Craigslist, and our singer had like an ancient saved search for a keyword of a band, and Eric included that band in his ad, and our drummer and singer responded to it. And that was kind of the initial inception.
Wow, so Craigslist still works. I like that. I put a band together in 2018, and we found a great drummer on Craigslist. So I think I like to hear that it's still out there.
Yeah, it's like the most wonderful lo-fi. It's as fancy as it needs to be. And it's just like, I'm on Craigslist like every day. And yeah, it is endlessly amusing that that's kind of how the band came to be, especially if you spend any time getting to know us. Like, we have a very familial chemistry. So it's just, we really lucked out in how we all came together.
That's awesome. Yeah. Plus, like, the most ads I see for musicians or musician gigs or whatever are on Craigslist. Where else are you going to go? I've tried Reddit too, but I haven't had any luck there. Craigslist still seems to be the spot.
Yeah. I mean, I can't believe that people were looking on Craigslist. I mean, like I said, it was kind of middle of COVID. So I think people just had time to be on the internet looking at stuff. I mean, maybe people still regularly look on Craigslist for that, but it just never occurred to me.
What was the band? What was the keyword?
It's another Bay Area band called Comadre that I think, the guys are going to kill me for this, but I think they were kind of a big deal in the like emo, screamo scene in the early aughts. Yeah, and it was just like one of the key terms.
I see. So wait, why are they going to kill you? Is it because you're not as familiar with them?
The like combined like knowledge of the Bay Area music history between the other four members is outstanding, and I just don't know a lot of it. There's also like a shared knowledge of certain music types that some of the guys really nerd out over that I have like a glaring spot in my kind of like musical vocabulary. So I learn about so many bands through the other guys in the band, and like our singer is going to listen to this and be like, dude, this is Comadre's history, and be able to like give a paper on it.
Yeah. The band always has at least one person like that, and that's good. You want that person in the mix.
Oh my God, I'm so thankful for it because it means it doesn't have to be me. Like every new piece of information that goes in my brain, something else important leaves.
So you said everyone was coming back to music after being away from it a little bit. Does that include you too?
Yeah, I played music a lot when I lived in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is where I'm from. That was like my identity. I played in a ton of bands, and it was my entire life. I played bass, and I moved to New York kind of abruptly for like a 3-month job opportunity that was just going to be like a summer long thing. And then I inadvertently stayed there for 5 years. And when I moved to New York, I didn't take any equipment with me because I was going to be there for such a short period of time. Fast forward 10 more years pass and I'm in SF and just hadn't played music in 15 years. My life changed, and other interests kind of like took the place of what music had been. And you're a musician, you know how like, well, maybe you don't. I was a little jaded as well. So my interest has changed. And during the pandemic, I just had to get off of my phone and decided to learn to play guitar.
There's been years where I haven't been in bands, 3 years, 5 years, whatever. And I was jaded because things didn't work out the way I wanted them to. And to some degree, I felt that I should be handed opportunities. And now that I've really put in a lot more work, I see that's just not how things work. So I get what you're saying.
Yeah. And I had a friend say to me a long time ago that life is long and your taste can change. The thing you're most passionate about now, maybe you don't stay passionate about it, but maybe your passion goes somewhere else. And like, how great is that? Like, it doesn't mean you hate the thing that you used to be passionate about. Like, your tastes can change, and they can, and now again, like, playing music is what I do with all of my time. So I'm actually kind of really happy that I took some time away because I have this like renewed passion for it.
Yes, I'm with you on that completely. Like all right, every time a band I'm in ends, I'm like, that's it. There will never be another band again. I'll never meet anybody who plays again. It's just, how's it going to happen? It's not going to happen. And then it happens again. And, sometimes I'm really into it. Sometimes it's whatever. But I have that renewed passion that you're talking about now too. Like, just because I wasn't playing before, that doesn't mean I hated music. I was just like, just watching it or just listening to it.
Yeah, and you can't predict when these things happen. It's like being in a band. There's that old analogy of it being like you're in a relationship, and after every gnarly breakup, you're like, I'm done. I'm just gonna focus on myself for a while, and then you meet somebody, or you don't, and you spend some time alone. But then something happens, and you decide to like put yourself into it again.
Exactly. Yeah, that band relationship parallel, I know a lot of people say it, but damn it, if it isn't true, it really is a lot of parallels.
Yeah, I think so. And especially if if the band isn't just like a working relationship, especially if you're like emotionally involved and close with the members, and for that reason, like if a project ends, you're pretty bummed out. It hurts.
Yeah, especially if you invest a lot into it and it doesn't work out and it's beyond your control.
Mm-hmm.
So we get the band together. What happens? Do we start practicing? Do we start playing out? I've seen that you have some friends that you play with who have been on the show, Sean Leary and Loma Prieta and Jerome's Dream. Did you know all those guys before?
No, we didn't. I think I was like kind of naive about joining the band. Not just myself, but some of the other guys had spent a little time away from music. Eric, the other guitarist, had spent maybe like a decade. Viggy, our singer, had been involved in some other stuff, but I think I was just naive in the fact of like what we were doing. And it never really occurred to me that we were gonna play shows. I was just like, we were just writing, and I was like, I would be so happy if we just continue to write forever. Like, I love this. I love the like collaboration. I love working with the guys. And we had a bit of a lineup change. Our friend Chris, that was playing bass, decided he was going to move on. So we're like, oh, we should record the only songs we have, which were 3 songs. The songs on the EP were the only songs we had. We didn't like pick our 3 best songs. We just picked the songs. But we kind of wanted to just like take a snapshot of this moment before we moved on. Because again, like I'm sure you've been in the situation where you've moved on from a project and you don't get the opportunity to like look back on this special thing. So we wanted to do that. And yeah, that's kind of why we ended up recording. We recorded before we had ever played a show, which also seems maybe weird to some folks. But yeah, I think there was a bit of time before we ever played our first show after we had recorded. And like I said, I think a lot of it was kind of just for us. Like we didn't really plan on, we definitely kicked around the idea of releasing a physical EP, but kind of moved on from it. And just like we're looking into the future of like what else we were going to do.
So how did you end up hooking up with Iodine?
That's actually from our friends in Jerome's Dream. We've had a lot of really kind of crazy opportunities, and maybe I can get into that a little bit later. But I think like our 4th show or 5th show, maybe, we played with Jerome's Dream, which in hindsight, like that, I know that this kind of speaks to the like how there's this like spot in my musical vocabulary of who Jerome's Dream is. I had never heard of them, and the other guys in the band were like freaking out. But after we played with them, you know, we kind of became friends with Sean and Jeff and Eric and JD. And Eric was kind enough to tell Iodine about us. Like, I guess we made an impression, and yeah, that was kind of it. He kind of just got in Iodine's ear. And then another like art friend of mine, we've been like designer buddies on the internet. He does a lot of work for Iodine. His name is Tom, and I'm not going to say his last name because I'm just going to do such a bad job of saying it. But he had also kind of gotten in their ear around the same time. So it's just these little like degrees of separation and friendship that kind of led us to working with them.
Nice. Yeah, Jerome's Dream, great band. I've gotten to know them a lot better since partnering with Iodine and since having them on the show. And yeah, the fantastic live band, right?
Yeah, I mean, after hearing them, I was like, oh, wow, okay. I'm really glad we had this opportunity, and I didn't know about them before because I would have been more nervous than I already was. But yeah, they're incredible live. I mean, their you know, newest record also is incredible. Like it sounds like they do live. It's kind of an assault.
Yeah, that was my favorite record of last year by far. Where did you record your record?
We recorded at a studio called Sharkbite, which we're in kind of like a big warehouse that's filled with rehearsal spaces. And Sharkbite is located in the same kind of building, you know, like 100 feet down the hallway. I had no idea that it was there. But yeah, we just wheeled our amps down the hall, and we were transported to this beautiful studio. And our friend Ryan Ellery, who we share the practice space with, engineered it, and yeah, knocked it out of the park. We couldn't be happier with how it sounds.
Yeah, it sounds great. I love the songs, and it sounds like good things are happening already. We've got the debut out on Iodine. It sounds like we're getting on some good shows, right? I mean, is it kind of mind-blowing to you? Because it's funny to me that you went into this thing and you're like, oh, we'll just play together, and you weren't even really thinking about shows. Because usually I'm just thinking like shows. I want to get to shows. I want to play out live, because I don't know, between bands, it's usually a long time before I end up playing live again. But you just kind of like, you know, you were just thinking about the recording and writing.
Part of that is true. Like, there's a contingency of the band. Our bass player Dev and Viggy. Viggy knows everyone. You probably know Viggy, and you maybe don't know it. But you've met and you've been at a show together. But Viggy knows everyone, and he is like eternally like hungry for shows. So I just, in the background, there's always kind of stuff happening. There's a little bit of division of labor in terms of like who does what. I think I'm the most reticent to play shows because I'm like always excited to write, and I'm kind of old. There's only so much gas in the tank, but yeah, there's just always the Bay Area is very alive also with things happening. So there's no shortage of shows to be a part of.
Nice. So what do we have planned for the future? National tour, LP? What are we thinking?
We're definitely in writing mode with an LP. I'd say we're halfway through with plans to record this winter. No big tour plans. We toured recently, a short stint. We're kind of trying to focus. The occasional opportunity comes up that we can't say no to. But yeah, we would really love to tour more, especially like after we kind of have the opportunity to like get an LP written. And I know I was just saying today, like I was going through some photos and a lot of us can't wait to get back out, but nothing planned yet.
I see. What do you do for work?
I'm an illustrator and graphic designer.
Ah, nice. So if you were going to tour or something, can you kind of work it so that you're working out on the road? I can do that a little bit. Like I couldn't do a national, I don't know if I could do like a 30-day tour, but I could be out there for maybe a couple weeks if I needed to be.
I think most of us in the band are in a position where we could do that. Some of us could work from the road. I theoretically could, but I think my ADD is a bit too in charge, and I don't know how much work I could get done. I'm sure I could if I had to, but I also have really cool clients that, I mean, I don't know what you do for work, but I think a lot of the times where I think my schedule's chill. The next day something comes up and they need it yesterday. So it changes at the drop of a hat.
Yeah. I work as a consultant, so I'm in front of a computer all day, a lot of emails, a lot of spreadsheets, a lot of Word docs, a lot of Teams calls, all that kind of stuff.
I think that our brains maybe work a little bit different.
Yeah. Well, one thing, okay. I would have a hard time working on a phone or a laptop. I'm spoiled because I have 2 computers in front of me and 2 big screens. I don't know how I worked just on a laptop screen for years, and I didn't even have to wear glasses. And then once the pandemic hit, everything changed. My eyesight started going. I couldn't see as well. And now I don't want to do any work unless it's on a big like desktop screen.
I feel the same. I think I've just gotten spoiled by, well, I guess before, like some of it was necessity. I just had to work on a smaller computer. And now that I have the means to have things bigger and my eyes have gotten slightly worse, I become less okay with discomfort as time goes on, maybe.
So do we have anything coming up? Any shows announced or anything that we can announce to the people?
Yeah, we have some shows coming up. July 6th and the weekend of July 6th. I don't know if the 6th is a Saturday or Sunday. But there's a festival that our singer Viggy has helping put on called California Kicks. Jerome's Dream is headlining it, and it's 2 days of music. That's happening in Oakland at 9 Lives Warehouse. That should be pretty insane. I think there's like a fair amount of 2-day passes that have sold out, or it is low ticket warning. And then we're playing with Frail Body and State Faults on the 10th, 4 days later at the Parkside, which is in San Francisco.
Nice. I just saw Frail Body recently. Awesome band. Their latest record is killer.
Yeah, it's really impressive. I know that a lot of the guys in the band are super hyped on that right now. So, and State Faults, if you're not familiar, also a great band located just north of us in Santa Rosa. Also great band.
I got to check them out. Well, there is a couple awesome gigs you can check out. Drought, everybody, and make sure you listen to their new 3-song EP on Iodine Recordings. It's excellent. RJ, I love what you guys are doing, and I hope I get to see you at some point. And I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.